Hello, everybody. Good morning. Uh, just wanted to say hi and let's go ahead and get started with the episode today. Sorry if it goes a little quick today. I got a lot of things going on my Saturday. Usually it's not too crazy, but today's pretty crazy for me. So we'll try to get through it with all with the episode and try to be succinct, but don't hold me to that. We could be here for a while. But we'll do our normal thing. We'll do like pros and cons. We'll go through the thoughts on each chapter. We'll cover each like point of view and part, and I'll go ahead and summarize each chapter that we covered as well as the sub books, and we'll go ahead and have fun with it. But let's go ahead and get started here. Also, sorry if you hear any background noise. Like I said, it's a busy day, so we have people cleaning. So I really hope you don't hear it. I try to like set up my audio so that you wouldn't, but I apologize if there is. Good morning, everyone. Hello, Mr. Dad. Hope you're having a good day. Hello, Daniel. Perfect. Let's go ahead and get to it. These were some good chapters that we had, or good sub books that we had this week. For example, I think my favorite subbook was the Gadrobi Hill subbook. The Assassins one was good as well. We got a lot of cool stuff in both of them. We got some cool action after the two setup subbooks that we had previously. They were mostly set up. They weren't fully, but I think they were for the most part. But these ones, we really got the action rolling and the stakes are in place and we know what's going to happen for the final books. And then we also see like the ramifications of certain things coming into play already. And we had our first major death. Last time you guys were trying to ask me like who do I think's gonna die first. Well, I guess that got answered unless like he somehow comes back, but that'd be Tatter or not Tattersall, sorry, that'd be Hairlock. He got destroyed by the hounds, and we'll get to that later. But basically, Quick Ben cut the ties, and then the hounds like ate him up, splintered all his wood and everything. But we'll get to that later. Let's go ahead and oh, sorry for hitting the mic. Let's go ahead and jump right into it though. We're gonna start with chapter 11 of the yeah, he got bodied pretty bad. It was pretty funny though. He kind of deserved it because he was going crazy. Um, let's go ahead and jump right into it though. Like I said, I'm gonna try to make it quick this time around for this episode, just because I got a lot of things to do and not a lot of time. So, but we'll try to make it good though still. So, chapter 11 of the Assassins. I'm gonna read through my summary real quick. Yeah, Hairlock was definitely asking for it. Dude was literally like shooting crows at or ravens out of the sky, like messing with everyone and like doing all these crazy things. Like I don't know what he expected that people just let him do it or like it'd keep going on. Like literally, but Quick Ben had to do like a shadow pact basically to like get him to get the hounds to kill him, which was pretty crazy, and we'll definitely jump into that right now. So I'm gonna read my summary here that I wrote down. So for chapter 11, we start out with Krupp having another dream. Basically, in the dream, we get a whole ton of lore and a lot of things that went over my head. We also get, and basically, from what I got, she gave birth to like a new Tattersall, or like Tattersall soul shifted into like the pregnant baby in a way. And she basically became a soul taken shapeshifter. I don't know if she is a shapeshifter, but they said a soul taken. Um, and she's supposed to be like awoken, I guess, or ascendant. I'm not sure, one of the two. But after that, before we get dive into it, um, we then leave the dream. Krupp notices two foreigners speaking with like foreign accents, and we know this is sorry, or sorry, we know this is Whiskey Jack and sorry. And basically, when he sees her, he has like a headache, and I believe his eyes like roll up and go white. And he like sees something with the shadow um, for that. And then after that, he leaves. He goes to the Phoenix Inn, and then we get the perspective of Whiskey Jack and Tattersall. She's looking, and she sees him, and she has like a similar reaction, sorta. And as we know, we learned the people with the accents were the bridge burners, Whiskey Jack. And along with that, I don't think this came into play later, but we saw a man with red hands like watching Whiskey Jack the whole time that they were doing all of that. And after that, we cut back to Crocus. He's visiting his uncle and learning about being a scholar so that he can get with Madame Chalice d'Arles. And basically, in this part, we get a lot more lore as well. There's a lot of lore in this chapter that like is going to be hard to cover, but we get a lot. And uh, we learn a lot about like the Talani Moss here, and then we learn of like the origin of Daru, how they say it was founded on like a rumor. We learn the secret of the barrow, how it's like keeping captive a Jaghoot tyrant basically, or like he just said weapons and stuff. And then after we get all of that, we cut back to Sari, who's following Krupp, and she then hears like the word seer, and she has like a weird reaction to it. She's kind of getting like her old memories back, and then Cotillion or Cotillion, he basically is like, no, don't do that. You have to kill him. He's dangerous. Kill him. And it like the weeping she hears goes away. After that, she continues following him to like the inn, and from there she kills a dude that spots her following them, and basically Croker shows up, finds the dead body. He's like, "Yo, someone died," and then everyone's like, "Whoa, what's going on?" And then he's at like the bar where Sari's ordering like a ale, and then he's like, "Oh, I'll pay for it," and then he like brings his coins out. His coin, the Opon coin, like flips and it reacts weirdly to her shadow magic, and it's doing like weird thing and like bounces back to um Crocus, and she's like, "What the heck?" And then he also noticed at this time that there was blood on her blade. After that, we cut to Quick Ben, who's like setting something up. We don't know exactly what yet, but he is setting up a plan to go through the Chaos Warren and then go into the Shadow Warren and make a deal, as we know later. Um, and so basically, we'll cut back to the bar from there uh, with Crocus and the crew again, and he's like explaining, he's like, this girl has blood on her blade. You can't trust her. She's the one that killed what's his name. I have the name written down. I just don't remember it. Um, and from there, we then um, cut back to Quick Ben again, and he enters the Shadow Warren, and he's greeted by the sound of hounds after he calls for peace. That's basically the summary. A lot in this chapter, so it's not really a summary. But we'll go through it one by one with the point of views real quick for that. Let me see here. I'm gonna check on the chat. Yeah, the woman in the bar don't snitch on Sorry for killing the bouncer Chert just cuz. Yeah, that was a little sus. I'm like, I get, I don't know if that was just like a kind of thing like we got to kind of wave it away because we can't like explain it fully. I don't know. But yeah, it's like, we'll cover you, wink wink. I'm like, you don't even know her. She killed your bouncer. Like, what did the bouncer do to you to make you not like want him alive anymore? So that was a little sus. Um, so basically, going to Krupp's dream, there's a lot here. We have his dream. We learn of like the Pranchal, which are among the Krontalon. Uh, he's also talking about a lot of like cryptic stuff, about being like hunted by Talani Moss and then being born. I'm gonna bring up the pages actually because I think there's a specific thing I wanted to look at, but there was a lot of stuff like lore wise here that I'll need to read through like 10 times to understand fully in the context of everything. But basically, the woman shows up. She's pregnant and she's mentioning to Cruel that she's using Krupp's dreams because they are immune to intervention from newer gods. I guess only elder magic can intervene with Krupp's dreams. Uh, Also, I'm wondering, is this the woman that Cruel mentioned to Krupp in the second dream? He said there's like a woman that's going to lead the Talani Moss or something of that sort. I'm wondering if this is that woman. Um, for that, correct me if I'm wrong on that. That's just like what I was thinking when he told Krupp about like trying to find a woman before. Um, but it basically sounds like there's going to be like a new type of people through Tattersell the Awakened. Um, I don't know exactly how it fits lore wise. Okay, so this dream occurred before the Amas became immortal, so it shows interacting with the past in a way. Okay, that helps make sense because I know they're saying it was like past stuff. So there's something playing with time here where it's like the birth of a new Emas thing. Okay, that helps explain it more. I'm still have to compartmentalize it in my head, so I can't probably get it into words when I'm thinking about it. But that does make sense. Okay, no, thank you for that, Daniel. Um, yeah, and from there, basically, We see Tattersall shows up. Her flesh is destroyed because she soul shifted into Night Chill's body. Um, and basically, like, they're just talking about this whole situation that's going on. And Tattersall is going to be reborn as a little kid, as we'll see later in the chapter. Um, Cruel also shows up and tells Krupp that Lorne and Tool uh, to be careful for them, and like be worried about them. Lorne and Tool basically trying to do things, and then we see like the birth where she puts her hand on her, the Pran lady, and then Tattersall through the Reeve body. He says like through this body you'll be something we've never seen before, because he doesn't know if her memories are going to stay intact. Because even when Krupp asks that, he's like, will she remember anything? He's like, we don't know. We've never seen anything like this before be born. Because she's like doing a soul shift, and or I guess she's taking the soul of the baby and they're like fusing. And then she's going to age up again. But the baby's also like magical in the past. It's a lot with it. It's cool. Like, I like it. And I'm sure I'll understand it later, but it's a lot. I'll just say. I like my notes were like over a page just for this small little section, I think, here. Um, because it is just like a lot of stuff coming at us at once, but I like it. Um, we go on from that though, like I mentioned before. Krupp leaves like the dream, and basically he leaves Baruch's place, and he has the weird headache premonition with his eyes when he mentions something about like House Shadow, and as we know, Sari is over there, so it's like a mix of the two, like a premonition kind of thing. Um, and then he also notices that there's two people with foreign accents, which we know are the bridge burners. Um, we then go after that to Whiskey Jack, and he's basically just talking about how he's confused about Sari and how no matter where she is, she carries herself as if she belongs there. And like at first, I thought this was like the influence of Riga, because Riga like took her soul or like went in her body, and she has like thousands of years of experience because of Riga. But I don't think it's Riga as much anymore. I think it's a mix of Riga and Cotillion, um, because as we see later in the chapter, she gets released from Cotillion whenever the rope is recalled from Shadow Throne. So I think it may be the influence of Cotillion more than Riga, like I thought before. But either way, we still see her like um her past self is like seeping through at certain moments and really wants to like break free. Yeah, Krupp hears Malazan's swearing and gets a headache, and the images of House Shadow burning for some reason. Yeah, I don't know if he's like gets a premonition or anything, or like what it is, but that's basically what happens there, and they're in the same area. So yeah, in Whiskey Jack's perspective, he's just basically wondering about Tattersall the whole time and how she, or not Tattersall, sorry, the whole time, and how she knows these things. Then he sees the man with the red hands that's just like watching them. Uh, and then also Whiskey Jack is also getting a lot of headaches. So I don't know. In this universe, they need to like invest in some like Tylenol or ibuprofen, because we got like three headaches in like one chapter. Anyways, but like we end the chat, or we end the section with the guy just still watching them. I don't think he comes into play later, unless he does, and I just don't notice. But they specifically say it was like a guy with the red hands. Um, After that, though, we cut to Crocus. We learn a little bit about the city. So, like right now, there's a festival or like a celebration going on called Ged Gederon Feet. Um, Probably mispronounced that, but the festival's going on. He goes to visit his uncle. We finally get the name of his uncle's little winged monkey. His name is Moby, like the whale. Um, Let me just check the chat real quick. There's a theory that some characters get headaches from magic, like the characters Aragon from chapter 1 who recruited Sardi. Okay, that makes sense. Like the magic gives headaches, sort of. Or like, because I know at one point the healer, I always forget, I think it's Trots. was like, "Oh, I'll work to find the source of your headaches when we have enough time and everything. Right now, I can just soothe them at the moment." Um, and so we'll see where that leads to if it goes anywhere. We don't know yet. First book, and it's like a very minor thing in the aspect of the whole world and everything going on, and everything going to chaos. Especially with the Assassin War and Gadrobi Hills, as we'll see later. Uh, but yeah, we learn about his celebration. Crocus visits his uncle Mammoth. He's curious about how long it'll take to become known in the higher circles as a scholar, so that it could get with Chalice, basically. And his uncle's like, "Oh, if you're really dedicated, maybe a little less than a year, maybe a year to two, depending like how dedicated you are to becoming a scholar." And he's like, "We'll start your first lesson today." So we learned that Daru was born on a rumor. The Jaghut, we get a lot of Jaghut stuff. So I listed here page 347 in the mass paperback. There was like a section here that we got a lot of interesting lore. I'm just going to read through it real quick. So it says, in the early circles in this realm, three great peoples struggled for dominion, none of them human as we would know human. Bowing out early in the struggle were the Forkel Assail and the Crucel as they are now known. Not through weakness, but well disinterest, the remaining two people warred endlessly. Eventually one fell, for they were a race of individuals, battling as much among themselves as against their racial enemies. They were called the Jaghut. Though the term has degenerated these days to Jag or Shurl, while losers in the war, they did not disappear entirely. It's said some Jaghut survive to this day, though thankfully not on Genbakis. As we know, that's not going to be true. Like with the tyrant that they're trying to wake up. So that was just interesting. I think it's a little more in context towards like the Jaghut war that we keep hearing about. So I just wanted to read that off real quick. Basically from there though, we just get like more scholarly lore stuff that I'm not going to go into at the moment. It's a lot. From what I understand, we learn that the Jaghut created secret warrens and items of power that can be used. They were very like powerful people. Also, the third people in the story are the Talani Moss, it sounded like. Probably wrong. I assume the Talani Moss, because the Talani Moss are always talking about their war with Jaghut and how they're like born from there. And then in the lore, they're talking about how this is like 3 millennium, where they're saying it's been like 300,000 years. So I'm assuming the two tie into each other. Also, with that as well, it said the Jaghut have a barrow of powerful items, but no one can find it. As we know, they're gonna find it with Tool and Lorne later. They don't like fully enter or go into it yet, but it's like the primary thing for Lorne and her storyline. And that's basically it for that. It's a really good lore section that I would probably go back to in the future just to read. When I like know more about the whole book and want to like dive into it more or with the context of the series. But it was a lot given there, and it's interesting to see like those type of lore sections early on, because I know a lot of like first books, it's like they're trying to get picked up, but they have the whole universe in mind. But usually the first books usually have more lore inconsistencies compared to later books, I find, when it comes to series. Because the first book, they're like, I just need to get out an interesting story people will like, and then if they like it, I can build on the world from there. And then they have to like retcon certain things. And I know there's some stuff with the magic that wasn't fully tied down, like with the Talani Moss, like interrupting warrens, as we mentioned with the last episode. So we'll see if any of this lore is like inconsistent or changes, or if it's like accurate to itself whenever we finish the greater scale of the whole series. Excuse me. And so after that, we cut back to Sari, who's following Krupp, and after hearing, and basically she hears the word seer from Riga. She gets confused and starts hearing like weeping of a child, and then Cotelian, like I said before, interrupts, and he's basically speaking to her and saying like the seer is dead. All that is, he said this, which is cool. All that is dangerous must die, and Krupp is dangerous. And then she's like, the weeping goes away, the shadow took over, and took away that influence. So we see she's still fighting back to become herself, which is good, and she's still holding on to a little bit of herself. The lore dump was like the first point where I felt like I actually understood any of the cosmology and greater lore of the series. All the lore is pretty much accurate, I think. It's just some of the magic, and you actually have characters who remember events differently due to how long ago they occurred, even in the same broad strokes are the same. Yeah, that makes sense. Um, Now that you say it that way, where it's like different perspectives, so it's like they remember in different ways. That makes sense because there's a lot of similar things in like different aspects and avenues for learning. Like this was through the scrolls with Mammoth, versus we get the lore through Cruel himself in Krupp's dream, and then we also get the lore through Tool, and all of them are like similar in ways, but they're like slightly different at the same time. Also, with like learning that there's a tyrant in the barrel, I think my prediction of it being Calor is like a decent prediction. I feel like it's my most solid theory I have is that the tyrant that's trapped in the barrow is Cruel. Um, it could be totally wrong when we actually reach it, but that's like what I'm still going with, even though it's just off a poem or an excerpt that we had in the beginning of one chapter. Uh, yeah, basically from there though, after we get sorry following Krupp a little, we see Krupp's going around. He's a little thief. He's like snagging a bunch of food and just grabbing stuff on the way to the inn. Um, and then while she's following him, the dude in the alley basically finds her, and she just like straight up shanks him in the eye. She's like chia chia chia, and like stabs him. And it's like okay, that's cool, bro. And then she just leaves the dead body and goes in the inn. She's like super scary whenever the rope is controlling her. I guess it's the rope controlling her. That's what I got from it, based off the recall that Shadow Throne did. They also have different motives, which they are sharing, uh, with which they are sharing that information. That makes sense too. They're trying to convince certain people. So it's like, who can you trust, kind of thing, based off their perspective. Do you trust Tool talking to Lauren, or is Tool trying to do a specific thing? Versus, do you trust what Mammoth's saying, in the scrolls, or whoever wrote down the scrolls, because he didn't necessarily make it, and what Cruel is trying to do. So that makes sense. Yeah. So after Sorry killed the dude, Crocus basically he decides to be the scholar, leaves Mammoth's place, and finds the body in front of the inn. Uh, Crocus then bursts in and he's like, "Yo, there's a dead body." And then Sorry ignores the crowd, walks up to Mies and the other lady, and they're like you guys said before, they're like, "Don't worry about it. You killed him. It's fine." Wink, wink. I like the only thing I could think of why they don't care is because they're like, we don't want this crazy little 19-year-old girl to like murder us too. So we're just gonna let her get away with it. Otherwise, she's gonna like shank us in the eye. Um, that's like probably where they're coming from. Otherwise, it's like, okay, why did you want your bouncer dead? uh, and then yeah, so she's like mad at herself because she ordered the most expensive ale in the place, and it makes it too obvious that she's not from here because she did that. Crookerson approaches and pays for his ale, and then the Opon coin falls out, spins like a stupid amount, ends up back in front of him, and he grabs it. And then also, sorry, Shadow Magic reacted in a weird way to it, and then Crocus goes to talk to Krupp and the crew from there. And then we cut back to Whiskey Jack, and we kind of figure out Whiskey Jack and Dujack's plan, which is basically to hire local assassins to kill the figureheads and weaken the power for Malazan to walk in and take over. And then we cut and we see Quickman. He's basically saying that he's gonna try to lure in ascendants, and he could die. That's what he said to Callum at the time. He's when he was talking about it's gonna be dangerous him going into the Chaos War. He said, "I'm gonna lure in ascendants and would die." And I noticed a lot in the later chapters. People are talking about like ascending, and people can ascend and awaken. So I'm assuming the ascendants are like beings that are like seen as like gods, um, or like some type of like demi figure. And there's a way to ascend because like they say Tattersell possibly ascended, and then like Animander Rake, I believe they said ascended, and there's like other people who are considered ascendants. So I believe it's like a way of achieving godhood or immortality, maybe. That's kind of like my perspective on it. Learn ascendance through hairlock. Yeah. Okay. Through hairlock. Got it. Basically, I'm assuming he's talking about like the hounds and everything then. Um, but Hairlock's like a wild card, as we know. He's just doing his own thing, and yeah, he needed to die, as we all find out. Um, but yeah, after that, the crew's like assembled. They're discussing Moonspawn and like everything going on with that situation. Crocus then sees blood on Sari's dagger and knows she basically killed the dude, but he didn't say anything. Partly because he's probably worried that she's gonna try to kill him too. And then we come back to Quick Ben, who entered the Chaos Warren, which touches all Warrens. And so he attempts to access the Shadow Warren. And upon successful entry, he calls for peace to the Shadow Throne. But he is greeted with the howling of hounds, and that is where the chapter ends. Good way to end the chapter. Makes you want to like read further, and keep going. So that was a good chapter. All of them were really good. I don't think there was any like actual bad chapters in this week's reading per se, but this one was super duper heavy with lore. But it was necessary. Okay, let's get to chapter 12 though. We're already almost 30 minutes in. I'll try to make it quicker. um, but chapter 12, we get even more lore, and we learn some stuff here. And I have like a future theory for stuff, but so basically, I'm gonna read through this real quick. Krupp is investigating what Cole said about the black dragons, and we learn a bit of lore, including what the crippled god is. He then has a conversation with Mamet, which is interrupted by Baruch, who says he needs to speak with Krupp, and then we cut to the crone, warning Baruch about Hairlock and the converging forces going to Gadrobi Hills, where the Barrow is. We then cut to Quickben, who is in the Shadow Warren, getting escorted by the Hounds, where he makes a deal to kill Hairlock with the Hounds in exchange for his freedom of life from when he was part of the Shadow and left. The deal is made and Quickben escapes, and we learn his last name is Dalat. The Shapeshifter is another. He says Dalat the Shapeshifter is what Shadowthrone refers to him as. Krupp then meets with Baruch, gives him a message from the Eel, and we discuss current matters. Baruch then tells Krupp to get the crew ready to leave Daru with the coin bearer. We then cut to Quickben returning, and basically him and Callum are interrupted by Sari, who tells them of the assassin. In this case, the assassin is Ralik. This is where suspicion of Sari is confirmed, since she was able to locate them through all of the restrictions and shields that they had up because he was in the Shadow Warren. So it's like kind of 100% confirmed she's like in cahoots with the Shadow at this point. We then cut to Ralik, who notices an assassin baiting him. So him and Ocelot devise an ambush, but when he re-enters the room, the assassin is gone. He then leaves to pursue, knowing it's most likely a trap, and they're going to instead try to trap the assassin. And then lastly, we cut to Crocus, who is on his way to return the artifacts he stole from Madame Diaro. And that's basically it for chapter 12. We'll go into detail on some of this stuff because there's some cool like lore stuff mentioned here. And as we know later, the assassin he sees in the inn is Ralik Nam as well. For that. But yeah, so we start out and we get a passage about the crippled god to start out. And Krupp's basically reading this passage in Mamet's place on the scrolls. He's trying to find his own information. He like passes over it. But I know the crippled god is going to come into play in the future, considering one of the books is called the crippled god. So it's definitely an important thing to look at with this. We'll definitely find out more in the future of what it is. We also learned that the Tisti Andi are what was referred to as the Black Dragons. When Cole was saying the 5 Black Dragons, it was kind of referring to like Tisti Andi. I don't know how Cole like mentions it per se or what gets him to mention it, but that's what we see. Basically, Krupp and Mamet start talking though, and they're talking about Crocus and how he's changing and why he's changing, and basically how Crocus like falls for any girl who like breathes and is in like a 5 foot vicinity of him and gives him attention. Um, he literally like any girl that gives him attention, he falls for. Because you'll see that with Sari later, even though she's like literally crazy. Yeah, he says, "Brevity cup, praise for brevity." Mm-hmm. And that's after he reads the passage, and then he returned to the fading Henry. Yeah, I don't know. Good point with that. That's interesting. I don't know what to say for that. Oh, and I just noticed as well, the passage in the beginning of the chapter, the person who says it, it's from Apsalar's Cant. So it says, "Walk with me on Thieves' Road, hear its song underfoot, how clear its tone in misstep as it sings you into." And we know Sari takes up that name later when she's no longer controlled by the shadow. It's ironic for Krupp to say, since brevity means concise and exact use of words in writing or speech. Yeah, the, yeah, it's definitely ironic because this dude is like the most purple dude in the world and can't even like refer to himself in the first person. um, so it's definitely ironic for Krupp to do that. Uh, we get going though after they talk about Crocus. They get interrupted by Baruch, and this is like a weird timing thing because we kind of like cut to Baruch actually sending the message afterwards. But he seems to be urgent. He tells Krupp to come meet him, and he also wants Mamet to meet him as well. We then cut to Crone, and Crone warns Baruch of Hairlock and how the two forces are converging, seeking something in Gadrobi Hills. And then we learn about like the Jaghut Tyrant and how he's imprisoned in the Barrow. Like I said before, my theory is Calor is the Jaghut Tyrant. As we saw before, I feel like the chapter excerpts give something. Now that I literally saw one with Apsalar mentioned, and we see Apsalar later is named again. So um, it's all starting to make a little sense. But Crone like basically confirms that there's a Jaghut Tyrant imprisoned in the hills and about the two forces, as we just learned. And that's where they're going to warn Krupp about the two forces with Baruch. We then cut to Quickben again in the Shadow Warren, and he is greeted by a hound called Blind. Ben is then guided by the hounds to a cool-looking castle that's like translucent, and you could like walk through walls, but there's like no windows and still light somehow. I wonder if that's the castle on the cover of Gardens of the Moon. Not on my cover. I got like the bad cover with just like the generic fantasy dude, which I noticed as well with this cover. Online, this cover has like a woman on the bottom, but this one doesn't have it. So I wonder if they took it off because they're like, we don't want it to be like some Fabio or like Conan the Barbarian type of thing on here. That's my theory for that. But the current covers with the green castle, I'm assuming that's Shadow Throne's castle. With that, but yeah, he's guided to them, and then we learn a bit about Quick Ben. He's like talking about how he used to be an acolyte of the Shadow, and as it gets revealed later, he was pretty high up, and he betrayed the Shadow and left them, which no one does. We also learn that Shadow Throne can't resist making deals. Basically, um, if someone wants to make a deal with him, he's like yes, yes, yes. But then at the same time, he also will do anything to like betray them, double twist them, kind of like a genie in a bottle. Um, he'll like try to find any loophole to go against them or kill them in the moment. Like he was gonna make the deal and be like, okay, and then he's gonna keep planning to kill him right away. But due to like Quick Ben knowing the Shadow, he's able to escape. But yeah, he makes a deal to get revenge on Hairlock in exchange for his life. So he basically gets freed from the Shadow, tricked Shadow Throne, and is able to get the hounds to kill Hairlock all in one like foul swoop, barely getting away. Check here. Yeah, a lot of the covers for mass market stuff are generic fantasy things that could be a number of things from the book. The tower, for all I know, could be Mock's vein from the prologue. Yeah, actually, I think you're probably right because I think the tower actually has like a window on it in the book. But I mean, It's generic cover art. Until like a series is actually established, you never really get cover art that matches what the series is meant to be or like important things. It's really hard to find cover arts like that. Um, like you have the Wheel of Time cover art with like book one, where they literally have one of the characters looking like Nicolas Cage, which you'll never unsee if you look at the Eye of the World. I think it's on the back cover. One of the characters, I think it's like Perrin or someone, that his face literally looks like Nicolas Cage, and you're never gonna unsee that now that you know it. um, but yeah, that's probably what it is. Um, I only thought that. I think it's because like the green aura as well. That was kind of like how I was picturing it when I was like entering the Shadow Warren, like aura wise. But we get back. Um, let's see. After he makes a deal, and Shadow Throne, as we know, calls him quick shapeshifter Delot. So I'm wondering if he could like actually shapeshift, or if that's his thing, or that's just like a way they call things because they mentioned shapeshifters a few times. Yeah, and book 2, 7, 4, and 8 are the only ones that kind of recognize from the book in the mass market versions. Yeah, unfortunately, that's kind of how it goes unless you get enough, like, I would say by the company running it. This is Tor that published it, so I think the future ones aren't Tor. I have them back there. Never mind, they're still Tor for the mass market, at least. But I know it's like sometimes the authors get say, sometimes they don't. So yeah, we basically after Quick Ben's deal and getting out of there, we cut to Krupp and he has a message from the eel. We still don't know who the eel is. Like even Krupp didn't see the eel. Like a little kid like handed him the message, and so we'll have to kind of pick up on the clues and see what we can find from there. I don't really have a theory of who it is, um, but we don't know exactly yet. Bantam and Tor. Okay. Yeah, the mass markets I have are from Tor. I get them all from like use. I try to buy my books from used bookshops. If I can't find them, then I'll like order them online. So that's why I got like the janky cover instead of like the cooler one with the person. I don't know. I don't really like people on covers to be honest. It depends how it's done. I always prefer like a more artistic cover. Um, but yeah. So Krupp basically has a message from the eel. Baruch then tells Krupp to be ready to gather the crew and leave when ordered. And Baruch says, get him if you can. If the coin bearer's influence turns against us, the assassin is in charge of killing the boy. Which doesn't really matter because Rallick doesn't really go along with them anyways. But they're basically saying if the boy is controlling it, Opon, the boy version of Opon, is controlling Crocus, be ready to kill either the boy or Crocus, is from what I got from that. But their job is basically to escort Crocus to the Gadrobi Hills from this point. And after we get like that, we cut back to Quick Ben again, and he's coming back, and him and Callum then get interrupted by Sari. She said she could see the cracks in his shield, but really she can't. It just confirms she's part of the shadow, and he was in the shadow realm touching it, which is why she was able to see it. Quick Ben also said if Callum attacked her, he would have died. So it means she's pretty powerful with the rope controlling her. Um, like the fact that Callum would have died if he attacked her, even though she just seems like a little girl, is pretty intense. After that, though, we cut to the stranger man at the inn showing up. As we know, this is Callum. It's kind of like a weird time thing because we cut from Callum to that, but it makes sense because they're like, oh, we found the assassin, and they're talking about Rallick, and so it's like mixing the two time frames. At first, I didn't know it was Callum until it was revealed, like in the next chapter, or I didn't pick up on it at least because he's like this assassin's being like very obvious and like showing their sigil and everything, and it's such an obvious trap. Um, so basically, Ocelot and uh, Ocelot and wow, I just blamed it, Rallick. They devise a plan to make a trap for the assassin trap, and they follow him out. And basically, after that, Crocus is on his way to return the items to the maiden as well. So that's where we leave the chapter off. So decent chapter. We got a lot of setup. We got the really cool stuff is what we get with the shadow and quick bend in that chapter, like the lore behind it. We get to see what the shadow realm looks like, how it kind of functions, how Shadow Throne is like a deal maker, can't resist the deal. Like he should own a pawn shop or something, so that he could always be like wheeling and dealing. But um, yeah, he would be a good like he would be a good like loan shark with that because loan sharks are all about betraying their clients basically. Hey Bob. Um, nice to see you join in. Not sure my phone will not show the live stream. We'll catch up later. Excited to hear your thoughts. No worries, Bob. Hope you have a good one though. Um, yeah, we go to chapter 13. Did I write down a summary for this one? Some of the chapters I didn't. Um, write down a summary because they're like too much. Yeah, I didn't do it for this one. So we'll just go through piece by piece then. Um, so basically for this chapter, Callum, we find out is the assassin. Uh, he's being really obvious basically because he wants to have a meeting with the assassins in Daru to hire them, as we know. Um, and they're trying to do like a proposal. And so him and Quickben get prepared, and they're basically going to execute their plan and follow Ralik to the rendezvous point, but also still have the advantage without getting ambushed. And so we see like they're basically following him with like a floating spell that Quickben makes, where he can like descend at any rate of speed he wants, or like keep floating. Um, and then we cut to Ralik. There's a lot of cutting back and forth in this chapter. Ralik basically only senses Callum. He doesn't know Quickben is still hidden from the perspective, and so he's like, "Who is this assassin? He's pretty crazy. Like I can't find him. He's like flying, like using magic." He thinks it's one guy when it's really two, and Quickben's doing a lot of the work. And then we get some weird demon thing. We cut to like a weird demon thing that's like sensing magic, and we learn later this demon thing is like a little winged demon that Baruch controls, and he can like vanish. So I guess like sorcerers have the ability to summon demons that they capture, as we see later. I don't know exactly if that's how it works, but it's pretty interesting. Um, yeah, so we have the little flying demon thing, and then something comes and attacks it. We learn later this is Moonspawn basically attacking it, and also the assassins that have been in Daru were Moonspawn as well, the ones that are like veiled in black. So we get a lot of questions answered for the beginning whenever we had those assassins who chased Crocus. Yeah, and then we see after like the little demon dies, we see 12 assassins encircling people, and a massacre is about to start. The assassin war. And basically, those assassins are Moonspawn. They're not even the assassins in the city. And they're basically, as we find out later, Rake's plan is to kill all of the assassins so that the Empire can't hire them instead of just like killing the Empire or like telling them of their plan or hiring the assassins. Daniel said Ralik is the one who insists he isn't alone, while Ocelot is certain he is due to his scouts. Okay, thank you for correcting me on that. Um, yeah, so I knew one of them said it. I believe later in the chapter as well. Does Ocelot die? I kind of missed it because of like the haze of the action and everything. But I believe Ocelot dies, and Ralik kind of talking about Ralik talks about taking charge of the clan, since basically he has like an introspection later where he's like, "This is something I've always dreamed of, but not this way," or something like that. So I believe no, he doesn't die. Okay, I didn't think he died, but the way Ralik was talking made me like confused about that. Okay, Ocelot survived. Yeah, thank you for correcting me on that, Mr. Dad. Yeah, because like I was confused because Ralik was like, "Oh, I was wanted to be like the leader, but I didn't want this kind of like war and stuff like that going on later." And I was like, "Did Ocelot die? What's going on?" But no, I guess he's fine. Um, okay, perfect. Thank you for that. Yeah, so after we get that, basically the assassin war starts here, and everything's going down. Callum pulls an Ezio basically, and he's like hanging from the edge. So Ezio from Assassin's Creed, he's like hanging from the edge. He like goes up, like pulls the dude down, like knees him in the face and throws him off and kills him. Um, and then he encounters like another assassin who can go like invisible, and he ends up killing it, but he's stabbed in the ribs and the gut like really badly and injured. And then Quick Ben is like gone and nowhere to be seen at this moment, and things are just chaos. Uh, yeah, and then we cut back to Rom, who gets shot in the armor by a quarrel. I'm assuming a quarrel is like a crossbow bolt with the way that they talk about it. I tried googling it, nothing came up because it's not like I don't know if it's a real word, but the way they talk about the reference, it seems like a crossbow bolt. But I know they mention bolts later. That's why I ask. Um, but yeah, he gets shot, but it pierces his armor, but it doesn't like stab through him, which is good, but it still injures him. So they survive, and him and Ocelot leave after noticing the high sense of magic being used. So yeah, Ocelot does survive. Um, and then we cut to Sari, who's spying on Crocus, and her job is to basically eliminate Opon's last influence, but she's hesitating since she saw the coin and she had like a weird seer moment where was having those like seer flashbacks. So there's like hesitation now. She's not fully there. And I think part of it is Opon's influence with Crocus not being killed right away. Because of Opon's influence, basically Crocus is being spared by Sari over and over again, as we'll see later. Yeah, I assume since a coral is also a species in the Malazan world, the big dragonfly things, they are actually made from their body parts. That would make sense because it's like spelled slightly different. But they like shoot them, so it's probably some type of thing there. It's probably on the wiki somewhere if I like dove in, but I couldn't find it with a quick Google search. At first, I thought it was just like another word for a crossbow bolt, like an actual word. But yeah, that would make things. That'd be cool. But a coral is just another name for a crossbow bolt. It's on the okay. It's on Wikipedia. Got it. Okay. Yeah, that's what I thought. Maybe it's like the Daru name for a crossbow bolt, because I think the Empire mentions bolts, but then like the Daru perspective is where we hear quarrel. So that might be what it is. Anyways, yeah. So we go back to Sari spying on him. She kills the guard in the garden as well, but she also senses like a lot of magic and witnesses something on the balcony, and she's like, "Oh, it made me change my mind to killing him right away." And we find out later what she witnessed is just basically Crocus trying to flirt really badly, and then coming out of the area. So we return to Crocus, and basically he's just being a crazy stalker and like staring at her. And she wakes up, and then they talk. And he basically admits that he has a crush on her. She laughs at him, and he's like, "Oh, I'm gonna be the first one to be in line with you. I'm gonna be a noble. This is my name." He doesn't know why he's saying these things, and she just laughs at him. And but then you could tell she like somewhat like is like finds it funny or cares for him or doesn't want him to die because she's like run before the guards show up. So there's that part that she has, but at the same time, like poor dude, his heart's like broken because of it. But he leaves the area and then he sees Sari in the garden just like straight up staring at him all creepy, like under a little tree. Um, she's so creepy. Like whenever the rope's taken over her. After that, we cut back to Quick Ben, who basically summons the stolen demon that he took from Tashrin to cover their escape. We get his full name as well during this, and we learn that he also pities the demon, like because the demon's like in a constant state of being captured and can't do anything. Um, I'm impressed with Crocus for managing to be any bit smooth in that interaction. Yeah, especially when you see like how he interacts with Sari later. He's just like falls on his face most of the time. Um, Crocus and Perrin, I feel like, are two characters that are similar but in different ways. They both have Opon's luck. Perrin is more of like the arrogant noble idiot. Crocus is more he's intelligent and smart, but when it comes to women, he is just a fuck. He's just stupid when it comes to women, and he is so gullible and he falls for anything. Uh, Ben Adafon Dalat, Pearl said plaintively. See the last who comes. You send me my death. I know, Quick Ben whispered. Flee, then. I will hold them enough to ensure your escape no more. Quick Ben sank down past the roof. Before he passed from sight, Pearl spoke again. Ben Adafonda, do you pity me? Yes, he replied softly, then pivoted and dropped down into darkness. I know. I like that part. I feel bad for the demon. Um, because like I guess she's just living a life of being captured by Tatron, basically, only to be used at his will. And the way that it sounded like is her being killed is sort of like her being freed, but if she doesn't get killed, she just like gets recaptured again and is constantly used and used. It reminded me, um, so it's just like a depressing state. So that's why I think the pity thing came in with that. Yeah, Crocus and Gano's arcs are definitely parallels in Gardens of the Moon. They can't really summon themselves back to where they came from. Okay, that makes sense. Yeah, but with the demon though, we basically like part of Quick Ben retreating is he's like, I sent like a crazy magic aura coming, and we know it's Rake later, but we didn't know. 1 second, I'll be right back. Okay, sorry about that. 1 second here. Sorry if you guys see a little cat here. The cat wanted in, and he's being annoying. Let me adjust my mic. Okay, so you might see a little cameo if he like pops in the corner here. Um, but where were we? Yeah, so we saw Rake basically come down to kill uh the demon. Um, and then after that, trying to find out where it was. Oh yeah, after that we cut to Ralik, and this is like the weird part to mention, where Ralik was like contemplating his past decisions and ambitions, and this is where he finds Crocus, and basically he tells Crocus and warns him about Mammoth and about the Claw and the people and everyone coming, and he like fills him in on the situation at hand, and then he also tells Crocus to stop thieving, basically, because it will kill him eventually in the end, and it's not going to work out for him. And then Murillo shows up, and the two of them have like a conversation, and he tells Nam of Baruch's plan, and then Nam says he wants him to leave the city. And obviously, Crocus isn't going to leave. Or Nam tells him he won't leave the city. Um, After that, we then cut to people attacking the people attacking being Moonspawn. We like get their perspective from Surat, and they're basically talking to Rake. So we learn that the menacing aura that Quick Ben and Callum ran from was Rake, who killed the demon with his insane sword that we learn about, Dragnapur. Crazy, that thing. We'll get to it in a second, like when it pops up here soon. But that's I like the concept of Dragnapur. It reminds me a lot of Sisyphus through Greek mythology. I would say the rooftop fight was a really great sequence. It really was. It was a good action piece. I feel like we needed it with all the setup from the previous chapters. There were like action moments, but we really needed it to like get the action going. And there's like more of those in the chapter as well. But I liked how they did it with like the back and forth and the sense of mystery. Even though you have the different perspectives, you never know who is who exactly until it's cleared up later. Yeah, we're currently voting for our favorite Malazan quotes that begin with each letter of the alphabet on Reddit, and that Quick Ben bit was the runner up for Q. which while not impressive since it's cute, is cool. Yeah, I can see that. For the vote, does that have to be like the quote has to start with like a Q, or is it like the character has name has to start with a Q, or both for that? Because that'd be interesting. Because I feel like it's an easy one for a quick bend is easy to cover for Q, but I like that the quote he did though. Okay, so after we get the whole Rallic and Murillo plan, starts with a Q. Okay, quote has to start with a Q. That's pretty cool. I want to check it out, but I don't want spoilers at the same time. So it's like that double-edged sword with it. Let's see. So yeah, after we learn about the Tistiane, the ones being attacked, we cut to Whiskey Jack. Or while we're learning about that, we hear like a big boom come down from a building. It sounds like an explosion. Rick kind of just ignores it. And then we cut to Whiskey Jack, who's working on his sabotage plan with Trots and the other person. I forgot their name, but they're like making bombs basically. And then Callum and Quick Ben come through the door and they heal Callum. Quick Ben fills him in on everything that's going on with Moonspawn being involved and how they know the Empire is here. And they basically have to figure out a new plan now. Moonspawn. Um, we then cut to Sari, who sensed the demon's death and witnessed everything with Crocus. She then follows him and she hears Ralik's conversation with Murillo. And after hearing the conversation, she decides she wants to go outside the city to kill Crocus once she knows Opon's intentions for the boy. Once again, I think it's part of Opon's influence, like with the luck of Crocus not killing him right away, because like there's just gonna always be something to intervene with Crocus while he has the coin. Um, After that, we get Baruch, who meets with Rake. They discuss what happened and the ramifications behind it. Rake then explains that he killed the Vorkin to avoid the Empress hiring them, and Baruch uh, is basically mad at him, lets him know it. And then Rake replies back to Baruch that he must be more than an alchemist because not many challenge him unless they feel like they're powerful. So there's something more to Baruch, obviously, that even Rake can sense. I wouldn't since it's very spoilery heavily, as I don't think any of the ones chosen come from Gardens of the Moon. Okay, good to know. I definitely will not take a look at that thread yet. I can't. That's one of my favorite things about finishing a series, though, is like being able to go into the community and look at lore videos and threads and quotes and like not have to worry. For now, it's like I'm just running blind. Like Wheel of Time, I literally wouldn't even Google characters' names because I didn't want to be spoiled. Like, and I even got spoiled on a few things. They weren't like end of book stuff, but I did have a few spoilers. I wouldn't fully make it through. If I remember correctly, one of the quotes is literally about a character dying. So yeah, don't check it out. I'll avoid it. I'm probably gonna avoid the Reddit. Or I guess the Reddit does a decent job at like saying spoilers or not. So I might go in every once in a while, but until I'm fully finished, I won't fully dive into the Reddit. um, but yeah, during Baruch's meeting with the Rake, um, like I said, there's more to Baruch than meets the eye. Um, and basically, Baruch mentions something about like Rake ascending. So I think it's pretty safe to say Rake's like some type of ascendant, from what I understand. And then the two make up over wine, and Baruch makes a reference to Rake's sword that killed the demon. Rake then thanks him for the two Pale Wizards. So apparently, the Pale Wizards aren't Tattersall or anyone like that, and there's someone else, and Rake already got them from Baruch, so they're still working together. It's funny since the Malazan wiki acts as if every character is dead when presenting the information, so it confuses a lot of people who think they got spoiled when they didn't. Is that just like because of the way they worded in the wiki? Like, hopefully they're not putting like born this year and died this year kind of thing. But like, maybe it's just the way they explain it, I guess. That's funny. I mean, that's better than getting an actual spoiler, because if you can't trust anyone, then you don't know what's real, kind of thing. It's like whenever I don't know if I do this because I'm like toxic, but I'll gaslight some of my friends when they're watching a series. I'm like, yeah, they all, like when you're like, oh, they all die at the end when you say something like that, or sometimes you like lie to them about certain things that happen just to confuse them. I do that sometimes to gaslight. Probably not the best thing to do. But anyways, after that cool moment with Rake, we get more cool stuff with it. Like Rake is just really cool, even though he's kind of could be seen as like the bad guy, but not really, because there's like no one is really the bad guy at the moment except for Hairlock who got yeeted. He's done. They use past tense because of the framing of the series. Okay, so the past tense makes it seem like they're dead because they're like they did this, they did that. Okay, or they used to do this. Okay. Basically, we cut to Kruplo, who is dreaming again, and he talks to Cruel. Cruel tells him of Rake wielding a strong sword named Dragnapur that is strong enough to kill Cruel. He also tells Krupp to protect Crocus because the Elder Jaghoot magic is involved, and things are going to get crazy. And it's not really Elder magic because it was like created at their time, so it's not Elder magic to them. It's only Elder to modern day people. But basically, Dragnapur, as we learn, whenever it's used, like we hear, like when Krupp's hearing the dream, he hears chains and wagons being pulled, and we see when their soul, instead of going through the Hood's Gate, their soul gets chained permanently to this wagon that's dragging them, or they're dragging the wagon, vice versa. So that's why it reminded me a lot of Sisyphus, who is the Greek mythology where he's constantly pushing a boulder. He's chained to a boulder and he's pushing it up the hill, only for every time he gets to the top of the hill, it falls back down and he has to restart the cycle over and over. There's other Greek mythology as well that's similar. Like I know there's one where there's someone eternally drowning and they're extremely like thirsty and there's like fruit hanging above them. Every time they go to get the fruit, like the water will rise high enough for them to almost reach it and then it like lowers every time. And no matter what, he's not going to get the food to fulfill himself, and so he can drink the water to lower the water. But then when he does that, he can't get the food, vice versa. So like constant torture, forever, like purgatory kind of thing. Yeah, Book of the Fallen aspect of the sea. Okay, okay, but that's basically it for the first sub book. Looks like we did it in about an hour, probably on pace for our other stuff as well. We'll get to sub book 5 though, the Gadrobi Hills. And we'll just continue going through it. So for this one, it's in the 907th year in the third millennium, the season of Fandaberg, in the year of the five tusks. By Malazan reckoning, 1163rd year of burn sleep. Talani Moss reckoning, the year of gathering. Talani rise. And there's a lot of lore on this page, as we see with page. It's on page 420 in the mass market. Let me pull it up real quick. One of the cool things that it's basically Lauren and Tool talking, and it says one thing I liked it was you were of Crude Ghislaine, the Warren of Darkness. Crude Ghislaine stood alone, untouched. The goddess, their mother, knew loneliness. Tool hesitated. There's probably little truth in this story, Adjunct. Go on, Lauren said. In her loneliness, the goddess sought something outside herself. Thus was born light. Her children, the Tisi Andi, saw this as a betrayal. They rejected her. Some hold they were cast. No, sorry. Some hold they were cast out. Others that they departed their mother's embrace by choice. While Tistiani mages still use the warren of Kuroth Ghislaine, they are no longer of it. And some have embraced another warren, that of Starval Demelaine, the first warren. Whose warren did Starval Demelaine belong to? It was the home of dragons, Adjunct. So, like I said, we get more stuff with like Tistiandi and dragons and like the Warren of Darkness and sort of like the origin for the Tistiandi. Not a full origin, but like more history about them. Let's see. I saw them on the shores, deepening pits of their gaze vowed immortal Warren gaze, the sighing Callum of Jagutsis. Gothos folly. Yeah, I think that's the intro, right? Let me see. Yeah, Gothos folly. Saw them on the shores, the deepening pits of their gaze, vowed immortal war against the sighing calm of Jakut seas. Don't understand that yet, but I'm sure it'll come into play. It's annoying copying and pasting quotes. Remove the spaces on YouTube. Okay, I gotcha. Yeah, I don't know what that comes into play yet, because it's still the Jaguar still comes like confuses me. I don't know if it's like I guess it's the Talani Moss are obviously involved, um, and that's why they're mentioning that quote with Tool. But like the whole everything with it is still confusing. Like even later, we get like a part where Tool's talking about the Jakku Tyrant that they're gonna release, and he says that Tool was sent because he's dispensable and he's not strong. Versus if a Bonecaster Talani Moss was sent, they would be able to like take over the world. Um, and like the Tyrant, even though they're releasing it, doesn't mean you can control it. And there's like a lot of things coming into play with it. But I put that down. Get back to this. Yeah, we basically get a lot of lore surrounding like Animan Rake, the Son of Darkness. Um, we learn, like I mentioned before, the Jakku Tyrant can't be controlled and can take over the world. Rake is the only one who can enslave it with Dragnapur, basically. And we also learn that the Tistiandi, Darkness Warren, where it came from, and what happening with it, and why the Tistiandi like use the Starball Demolane Warren, which is the first Warren, I guess. And then after that, we cut back to our Daru crew, minus Ralik, and they're basically going to the Gadrobi Hills. Sounds like they left with all they left with was one horse and a mule, so majority of them are walking. Uh, and They didn't like give a proper explanation to Crocus. It sounds like either. Everyone kind of knows what's going on except Crocus, and I guess except Cole too, because he's just too drunk at the moment. We actually get a lot out of Cole though in this section compared to like previous books. He's not really a thing in previous sub books, but in this sub book we get some good stuff from Cole. Crocus is confused as to why they are there, basically, and simply put, they are looking for a rumor, is what they say, which is the Warren, or not the Warren, the Barrow. And after that, it's a really short chapter. We get Sari, who's still following them, but since there's danger ahead, which could be anything from Lorne to Hounds, the Shadow, like the Talani Moss. There's a lot of things going on. And then we cut back to Lorne and Tool, who arrive at the barrow, or like the stone that like signals the barrow. And Lorne is kind of like apprehensive, it sounds like, and after hearing everything that Tool had to say, and she's not sure if she wants to go along with the plan. She eventually convinces herself to go through with it, though, but she is apprehensive. And Tool is also apprehensive as well. After that, we then get a nice quote about humanity from Lorne, which I'll read on page 427. Let's see. Where is that? Oh, here it is. This is when she's like talking to herself. She says, "Oh, Lysine," she murmured, tears welling in her eyes. "I know why we fear this Jakku tyrant. Because he became human. He became like us. He enslaved, he destroyed, and he did it better than we could." She lowered her head into her hands. "That's why we fear." She fell silent, letting the tears roll down her cheeks, seep between her fingers, trickle along her wrists, who wept from her eyes. She wondered, was it Lorne or Lysine? Or was it for Arkine? What did it matter? Such tears had been shed before, and it would be again, by others like her, and yet unlike her, and the winds would dry them all. I really like that. And another thing I really like is even the bad guys, like Lorne is someone that we probably should be viewing as a bad guy, or like the antagonist, because what she's doing is totally opposite of Tattersall and Perrin and everyone else, and she's doing her own thing. But I still love her perspective and her relationship with Tool, and you still feel for everyone. So it's really cool how they do that and they tie everything in and make everyone, even the ones that you're not necessarily supposed to root for, someone you empathize with. And then Daniel put a quote here: "I saw them on the shores, the deepening pits of their gaze vowed immortal war against the sighing calm of the Jakut seas." God, those fella. Oh, yeah, sorry, that was the old thing that you mentioned. "Mr. Dad, Through the gamut of life, we struggle for control, for means to fashion the world around us. An eternal, hopeless hunt for the privilege of being able to predict the shapes of our lives. Really good quotes. I love the introspection that it all brings. After that, though, we cut back to Perrin and Talk, and they're basically following Lorne and Tool. And all of a sudden, a warren opens up in the air, and it seems as though they're like heading towards an ambush, which they are later. Next is chapter 15. We get some cool stuff in chapter 15. This might be my favorite sub book so far, the Gadrobi Hills, with everything going on. A lot of cool stuff and action sequences. Okay, so chapter 15. Let's see. I don't think I wrote a chapter summary for this one. One second. Okay, so the next chapter, Quick Ben is checking on Hairlock, and he notices that he's in the Rivy Plains, and this is like foreshadowing, I guess, for Quick Ben, or not Quick Ben, but Hairlock attacking Perrin and Talk. So Perrin and Talk are going down the trail. Perrin tells Talk that Talk should leave if things get too hairy. Talk and Perrin continue down the trail, and then they're attacked by Hairlock. Talk dips through like a tear, I think, so he like leaves through a tear, and Hairlock is ready to exact his like slow revenge on Perrin and like torture him. And then they hear the howling of hounds, and here comes the Shadow Hounds to rip Hairlock to shred like he deserves. I think the part that really got me pissed at Hairlock was him killing the Great Ravens, because it's like, why? What did the Great Ravens do to you? Yeah, they work for Moonspawn or whatever, but like, I don't know, killing animals is like one thing. I don't like it. So I am glad he got murdered and ripped apart. I was a little worried for Perrin at first though, but he has dumb luck on his side, as we know. Okay, and then we cut to Quick Ben, who basically he calls upon the rope and gives him a location of Hairlock in hopes of saving Perrin before the hounds arrive. So he's basically like telling the rope, he's like, you need to get there and help and kill him. This dude's not part of the deal. You need to kill him right now. I'm giving you the location, blah, blah, blah. And he is contacting the rope to do this. And then after that, we cut back to Lorne, who went to get like a look of the Azure Lake and ran into the Daru group, and she messed them up. Like her fighting skills are like 10 times better than like all of them. Maybe if Ralik was there, it would help a little, but not really. She basically pulls out her sword, like dispels any of Krupp's magic to the point where he gets like pushed off his mule, and he like literally like almost breaks his neck from falling off. And then she like takes out Cole, slashes his leg and everything, and then she knocks Murillo out, and then basically lasts is Crocus, and Crocus is like, bro, leave me alone. And then of course with Opon's luck, she's like, okay, I'll leave you alone, just like don't bother me, get out of my way, kind of thing. Because I mean, who just like comes up and starts slicing at people? They could have like talked. She could have been like, who are you? Like she could have like warned them or something. But no, she just like straight up like pulled out her sword and started attacking. I guess it's also surprising because like, what are you doing here? Okay, and then after that we cut back to Sari, who is mad at Quickben for deceiving Shadow Throne. She finds out about this, and so she's pissed off. And she's also the rope, sorta, as we kind of confirm, or being controlled by the rope. But then she basically continues. She's traveling, and while she's traveling through the Warren, it gets interrupted by the Talani Moss presence, like pacifying her Warren, sort of the way they do the magic. So I'm not gonna focus too much on that aspect of it. After that, she witnesses a fight between Lorne and Daru, and she basically gets a tiny Fisher Girl flashback, and all the memories are like sneaking back up um, for her. And now she is, what's it called? She is basically planning to sneak up on Crocus now, and she's like going up to him in this moment. After that, we cut back to Hairlock, and Hairlock's trying to leave, and Perrin's like, uh, basically, Perrin's like, you're gonna root the day let's see. Yeah, Hairlock is like, I'm a dip, and Perrin is like, you will rue the day. He's gonna get revenge, but it doesn't matter. Hairlock ends up dying anyways because Quick Ben cuts his ties with Hairlock and basically cuts him off from, I guess, magic or the Warren. I don't know how exactly it works. Daniel said, the killing of the hounds is in a way a callback to the killing they did in chapter 1, and Perrin has the same reaction to both of them. Interesting. Yeah, I guess you're right about that. I never thought about that. Because we get there and like Hairlock, he's dead. And then Perrin gets surrounded by the hounds. Then Rake shows up and defends him. Rake kills two of the hounds and they retreat. Shadowthrone then makes himself present. And Rake and Shadowthrone talk. And he basically tells him to recall the rope. Otherwise, he will have to kill the Shadow. Um, and Shadowthrone recalls rope, and he reveals that Opon has influence over Perrin, which makes Rake suspicious. And, like, senses him and lets him know that Opon left his body. He's no longer in his body. However, we know his sword Chance is still blessed by Opon. And Rake then leaves him. Gets really lucky. Rake should have killed him. An Empire prior to this whole thing. Uh, and after that, we continue with Perrin, and Perrin then touches the dead hound and ends up inside of Dragnapur. And when he's within Dragnapur, this is where we see how it works, where it's like eternal torture, basically, with the chains and everything. And he sees the hound, and the hound almost attacks him, and then smells like his blood on him, and is just like kind of confused. Um, and a lot of stuff happens here. Um, a mysterious man in rags then shows up and is talking to Perrin. My theory, totally not based on anything at all, no relevance, no evidence. This mysterious man in rags is the crippled god. That's just my theory. Don't tell me if it's right or wrong. I just have like a hunch based off like the passages we got, because he likes to foreshadow a lot of things from what I've seen so far and place like bits that come up later. And it just sounds like the way they describe the crippled god, being in chains and tortured and stuff, like it just sounds like something it would be. So I'm assuming Dragnapur is gonna get like broken at some point. I don't know, but that's my theory. Totally based on no evidence though. Um, and then Perrin is basically trying to free the hounds, and he starts examining them, and then he goes to like the wagon and he calls upon Opon to help. The boy part of Opon comes out to help, and Perrin kind of like holds him hostage. The boy's like, I need to get the heck out of here. Why'd you bring me to this place? And he's like, okay, fine, I'll help. And he like releases the hounds, but the hounds just kind of like go through a portal and disappear. And then when he goes back, their bodies aren't there anymore. So he doesn't know if they're actually like free, or if they're alive again, or what happened exactly with them. I literally wrote down in my notebook here in like all capital letters. I'm like, Perrin is such an idiot. Like he's so dumb. Um, in in a good way. I still like him, but he's really dumb. Next after that, we cut back to Sari, who stumbles upon the Daru group, but since Rope is recalled due to Rake talking to Shadowthrone, his influence is no longer on Sari, and she doesn't remember anything that happened the last like 3 years. She doesn't even remember her name or like much. She just knows that she's from like Itokan. Cole then tells Crocus to take her back to Mammoth and find out what's going on with her and who was possibly possessing her, because he says that she was probably under possession. Um, and that's basically the end of chapter 15. Good chapter. I like the action. I like the influence, the things that were brought in, the what's it called? Like all the intrigue, like just the universe in general is insane. Like with the Warrens, Dragnapur, how you go into this and it's like eternal torture. You have Krup's dreams. Like there's so many aspects of this world building that is just fascinating. And it's crazy to think that these like two guys just made it all up, and at the same time are so solid and succinct in their world building and like their laws and everything they created for it. It's pretty crazy. It's like I kind of wish I could be in the perspective of them and see like what they did and like how many hours they crafted this. I think from an interview I saw, Don't quote me, but I believe they based it off of like their D&D world that they created. Like they have a homebrew D&D world that was created in this universe, and that was like the inspiration for it. If I'm correct, I could be totally wrong though. Let's see. We're almost there. I think this is the last chapter actually. Chapter 16. Yeah. So we're on the last chapter. Making good time. um so for chapter 16, Lauren basically believes she's made the wrong decision, but is continuing to go on. Tool brings her to the barrow as Lauren, and he doesn't know if he wants to go through with it, but he knows he has to. And then he also knows who the imprisoned person is now. And basically, after finding out who the imprisoned person is, he's like, I don't want to do this, but they're gonna proceed anyway with it because they have to, I guess. I don't know, because Lauren's like tied down by her attachment as the adjunct, and then Tool is tied down by like prophecy and his job as a Solani Moss. It's still like mystic with him what he's trying to do. With everything and converging forces, the three millennium, and like everything that he mentioned, he's very very cryptic. Uh, After that, though, we cut to Sari and Crocus, who are traveling back. I wrote down Crocus basically falls for a girl who is pretty and within his vicinity and breathes. So he starts falling for Sari, even though like she literally you watched her murder someone and she's like crazy. Literally, she doesn't remember anything, amnesia, like 10,000 red flags, Crocus. Like run now. Leave. She's toxic. Don't do it. Don't do it. But like yeah. Let's see. Mr. Dad said it was over many years of gaming that they crafted it, and many elements were only created when it came time to write the novels. Okay, yeah. His confrontation in chapter 15 between Shadowthorn and Rake is a thing that is foreshadowed by the deck of dragons in the beginning of the book. Yes, Perrin confirmed that as well. Because he's like, he mentioned the deck said like Prince of Darkness and everything, which is Rake. And then it mentioned House Shadow as well. And then I believe it mentioned the Hounds at a moment. I don't remember exactly. But yeah, it was foreshadowed. He does mention that. I forgot to bring that up. Yeah. Oh, Rick is the Knight of Dark. Sorry, yeah. Knight of Darkness, not Prince. Um, yeah, the Knight of the Dark. But yeah, it was mentioned in the deck. You are right. Okay. I think chapter 16 may be my favorite in the whole novel. Chapter 16 is really good. Let's see. Or 15. Let me see. Let me see, because I don't know if much happened in 16. Let me double check. Okay. Let's see. This whole subbook was good. This is my favorite subbook so far, probably with Gadrobi Hills. Just like I said before, with the action, the intrigue, everything converging on one another, and things are starting to make sense and be put in place, and I could really see the conclusion coming in for Gardens of the Moon. And I don't know what's gonna happen with it, but it's interesting because we're gonna get this, and it's like, oh, is this Jakku Tyrant going to be revealed? And then when he's revealed, what's going to be the ramifications? Even though this is in like the middle of the series time wise, so it's like we're going to jump to a whole different characters and people after this, and I'm interested to see how Gardens of the Moon ties into the series later. I like the stuff with Parent and mostly, or 15 is the Rake and Parent stuff mostly. I like the stuff with Parent and Cole at the end of the book a lot. Yeah, that was a really good moment. I like that as well. Which we'll get to in a second here. Oh yeah, and with the Crocus thing, this is where she gets her new name. For Sorry, because she doesn't remember anything, and he accidentally tells her of like Chalice. He's like, no, you can't have Chalice's name. And then he's like, okay. And then he tells her of Apsalar, um, and like the being the goddess of thieves, and she's like, I'll take that name, which makes sense. She stole the name, so it's only fitting for a thief. Uh, but yeah, Apsalar and Crocus then rests for the night. And so I guess we'll refer to her as Apsalar now, unless she gets another name or remembers her old one. Okay, and then after that, we cut to Murillo and Krupp, and they're heading back to Daru to help Crocus since it's their mission. They leave Cole to heal on his own, and the two, um, let's see, the two spat for a second, and then they get to work. They have like a little argument, and then they decide to pursue Crocus to Daru because that's the main mission, is to protect Crocus. That's, I just absolutely love both of our introduction to Apsalar and Perrin and Cole's slumber party. That's true. I think that scene with Perrin and Cole is where Perrin started to become one of my favorite characters. Yeah, I had noticed that because like before Perrin, like he was the arrogant noble idiot, but we actually get some like depth from him with that scene, which is nice. Um, let's see. So yeah, Perrin, we'll get to it right now. Actually, Perrin's basically traveling, and he runs, traveling along the Rivi. He runs into, actually this is before. He's traveling along and he runs into the Rivi, um, and he gets a cave, like his boot gets stabbed and it misses his foot, and like the flat of the spear is like landing on his foot. His like chest gets stabbed, but it misses as well. He's surviving because of luck against like the five warriors. They started with like a B, like the name of the actual people. That's right. This scene is also in chapter 16. Another reason to love it. Yep. And yeah, basically with the people who attack him, we see like a little girl come out with like an old lady, and the old lady's like translating for the little girl, and she tells him that she has a message for Perrin, and she tells him not to mourn the dead, and that he will see her again. And he feels like he recognizes the little girl, and then the little girl vanishes, only for him to realize it was Tattersall. Um, so Tattersall's already like 6 years old or something. So we'll see how she's gonna age up pretty quick, which is nice. I was like, oh, are we gonna have to wait like 20 years in the future before like they recognize her again? But no, she's gonna age up quickly. And then we get Perrin once more contemplating life and Sale and wondering what's going on and if she's ascended. This is where he like thinks that she's ascended, and I guess, would you consider her an ascendant now? I don't know exactly what ascendants are as of yet. Like I mentioned, they're sort of like, from what I get, like demigods or like people like Reik, who's like a knight of a specific god, or Warren. I don't know the exact thing with ascendants yet. The group is called the Revi. The animals are the Bedouin. Okay, that helps. Yeah, because they kept mentioning the Bedouin, and I was like, is the Bedouin the name of the people? But no, it's the Revi, who are controlled by Kaladin Brood, if I remember correctly. Um, yeah, and then Perrin, he's basically contemplating life in the next section, and then after that, he cuts to getting introduced to Cole, and the two of them meet. They share their backstories, and they plan to travel together when Cole heals. And we get some nice deep introspection here. Uh, and basically, everyone now is heading back to Daru except for Lorne and Tool. They're the ones that are still at the hills, but everyone else is heading back to Daru. And let me actually pull up, see if I can get a good part with this here. I mean, there's a lot of good parts. Like Perrin's literally crying. Like he's like, Hood's breath, he said, just one warm mule talking to another. Let me see if I could get like a good part of when they start talking, because I really like it as well. There's a lot of deep like introspection, like I said. Yeah, this chapter, Perrin stops caring for vengeance in the Empire and starts doing um what he thinks himself is right, which at this instance is to save Whiskey Jack and his squad. Yeah, that's another cool thing. And it's also like, why do you need to get vengeance on the Empire? Tattersall's alive still, so you don't fully need to. Um, but yeah, we learn a lot about let's see. I want to find like the good quote. Oh yeah, the both of them, they're like straight up like honest with each other. He's like, yeah, I work with the claw and everything, and he's like, okay, I guess we'll be honest with each other. And we get Cole's backstory where he's talking about how he was basically a noble of like one of the strongest families in Daru, and he hooked up with a whore. In this case, it's a Simtal, I believe her name is, and she basically took everything from him. And the worst part about it was after he was exited and he lost everything, he thought he would still have like friends at least, but no one would even recognize him as a friend or as a person or human being. He was basically dead, legally dead. And that was like the most depressing part for him. Not that he lost everything, the fact that he never really had like true friends because they were willing to throw him away after all of that situation. That was like really deep in the moment, and it made me like appreciate the Daru crew because they brought him in and they actually like care for him. And I guess Murillo might be one of his only friends that was like a noble that actually cares for him, um, because everyone else basically threw him to the curb. Quote from a previous chapter: have any of these thoughts been my own? Look at me. My every move seems a desperate search for someone to blame, always someone else. I made being a tool of a good excuse, a justification for thinking, for simply reacting, and others have died for it. Really good quotes. Yeah, I like everything that turns character at this point because I think it'd be easy to keep him in the trope that he is, being the arrogant idiot with the luck of the gods, basically. But I like how they tied it up, and it just makes me excited for the rest of the series because it's like how we mentioned before and talked about. There's a lot of like moments you hear and people talking about how this series like made them tear up, feel emotions, cry, and look at life in a different way. One really good video I would recommend if you guys haven't seen it already. It's like a why you should read Malazan. I think it's by like Books with Brittany, and she basically gets like a bunch of quotes from fans of Malazan and reads them off. It's a pretty long video, but there's a lot of like great inspirational quotes in there. I'd recommend looking it up and watching it if you ever get a chance. Books with Brittany, why you should read Malazan, basically. It's a really good video. Um, um, really good. I really love these last two sub books. Probably my favorite of the book so far. It just keeps getting better. I'm excited for the next one. So for the next week, we have a little longer of a read. So we're gonna do the City of Blue Fire and the Feet, and then the epilogue. So it's gonna be a lot. It's an extra like 30 pages than the normal. So just make sure to be on top of it, but it should be good. And then we'll finish up the book. We'll go over it. Probably we'll talk for a super long time, considering how long we already talked. And then the week after that, we're gonna have a review of the book itself. I might do something fun. I don't know. Like I want to see if there's like some type of like tier list I can set up and like put on stream maybe and do like a ranking characters so far or something like that or something like that. I'll see if there's anything fun we can do like Q&A wise or tier list wise, something like that for Gardens of the Moon. If you have ideas for that as well, you can let me know. But any questions though so far? Let me just check back in with the chat. Oh, we got some more quotes. She abandoned sorrow long ago, along with regret. Compassion was the anathema to the adjunct. Yet now all these feelings swept through her in tides, pulling her every which way. She found herself clinging to the title of adjunct, and what it meant, as if it was a lifeline to sanity, to stability and control. Such good quotes. Some people claim that Erickson isn't good at characterization, especially in Gardens of Moon. I always point them to the scene with Gnos and Cole to prove them wrong. Yeah, I don't think you could say he's not good with characterization. Like every character has their own voice and how they handle things, and you can distinctly tell each character from another. They all have their own motives and perspective on things as well. And you get like the moments with Lorne where she's like questioning humanity and like why we're doing this. You get the moments with Cole and Gnos. Like just in this sub book, there were so many moments of character development. I think they're obviously too focused, I would say, on maybe plot or lore, or just it may be too much for them to handle at once. Because that's one thing I always hear with Malazan when people go in. They're like, it's all so confusing. You just get thrown in, nothing makes sense. And like, I get it. It probably helps that we're like reading it slowly, but like, I don't think it's too confusing to follow along, especially with the characters. You should still understand their motives based off like the first read through and understand who they are and how they're developing. And even then, just in one book, we already see good character development. Quoting something else, someone else's thoughts on this quote. I really like this section with Lorne on the surface. It's telling us how she abandoned her humanity but the effect is the polar opposite. The core of her being as adjunct is being assailed, and it feels as if she's about to crack. The line about compassion is interesting as well, especially how Erickson makes sure to call her the adjunct and not Lorne. Erickson is just subtle with characterization. Yeah, he has a good, like, subtle way about it, and he really builds it up. And even like then, I feel like I mentioned before in other episodes, names are really important to him. The way someone identifies as himself is really important. So like Sorry getting the name, people earning their names like Quick Ben versus being Bent a lot. Like there's a lot of distinction behind names and what they call themselves and identify themselves as. So like even with Lorne, if we go to previous chapters with like Tattersall when she's wanting to murder Tattersall, that's Lorne. That's not the adjunct. But she has to be reminded she's the adjunct now, not Lorne. She has to give up her old self. And so you get these moments where Lorne doesn't want to continue on to the Barrow, doesn't want to release the tyrant, but the adjunct needs to for the Empress. So it's like that tackling of duty and who you are. I am now this person. I need to forget this person, but you can never really forget your past. That's kind of like the way I view it. It's great that you're catching on to that this early. Yeah, I think it helps with you guys being in the chat though, because like you guys definitely help me like pick up on stuff. But there's definitely stuff. There's development and thing going on. I just think people I feel like with fantasy people don't look into characters enough. They do with certain ones. I feel like Joe Abercrombie with First Law, people talk about, oh, there's no plot. It's all about the characters, and so they focus on it. But then when they look at just fantasy in general, if they're picking something up, it's about like the world, the mystery, the magic, what's the conflict going on. When the characters get pushed to the wayside, and especially like in epic fantasy, it's easy to do character development when you only have a handful of characters, but when you're juggling like 20 characters and as many point of views as we have with Malazan, it's not an easy thing to do. And I think with justifying what he gives and who the characters are at the moment, and not all of them have developed as a person as of yet, but some have, and you see their motives and you see where they're going. And obviously, it's going to get built upon with other books whenever these characters do get brought back. So I like where it's at, and it's like you can't expect like a character to fully develop in one book either, especially in like epic fantasy series. Let me see. I didn't realize how much I cared about the characters personally until I reached the first major character death and I cried, and I think that it's a pretty common thing among the fandom. For me, that was true about that one character, but I fell in love with a lot of the characters before then. Yeah, so I think that's kind of how it is. You don't know what you got until it's gone, kind of thing. um, and then when they're gone, then you're like, oh crap, that hurt, basically. Um, I'm excited about that though. I'm all about like the emotions and getting to those deep moments that like make you feel. Those are always like the best, and it's like one of the best reasons for reading. There's not a lot of books that like ever brought me to tears. One of the only ones is Hyperion, um, that like actually made me cry. I don't think any other books have necessarily done that per se. But yeah, I'm really liking where we're going right now. Everything's set up. The last book predictions for like the last section. I assume we're gonna get the Jakku Tyrant release somehow. Um, and we're gonna see the ramifications of Lorne and Tool doing that. And then I'm assuming we're also, what are we gonna do? I don't know. The rest of it's very up in the air. I don't know what Moonspawn's gonna do. Is there gonna be a conflict between Moonspawn and the Empire and Daru again? Is Daru gonna get destroyed because we have like the City of Blue Flames as one of the chapters? Well, a lot can happen. The only thing I think as of right now is the Tyrant's gonna be released. My theory is still that it's Calor, and we'll see what happens, and it can throw the whole world into ruin. Maybe Tattersall comes back to help save the day, kinda, with everything going on. But I'm very interested to see what happens. Any last minute Q&A questions or anything you guys want to talk about before we call it today? I'll give it like a minute or two here before I close it exactly, but we'll see if any questions. I'll just go over some thoughts though. In terms of like favorite characters so far, I think in the first section I was like, oh, Rake, because of intrigue and like all the shadow there's still a lot of intrigue, and I still like Rake. I don't know if he's my favorite though anymore. If I'm looking at if I'm looking at the favorite characters, it's hard to say. I don't feel like I really have a favorite. I enjoy them all for the most part. But Perrin is kind of growing on me, to be quite honest, even though he is like kind of an idiot. I like what happens with him. I like Quick Ben. I like the mystery behind him and what he does. Um, so far, hopefully we could learn more about him. But the whole Daru crew is interesting as well. I really like Krupp. Um, so I'd say probably Krupp, Quick Ben, Perrin are kind of like the ones right now. We'll see how that changes going forward. I really like Sari for her storyline and intrigue and like everything happening with her as well. I mean, there's just a lot to like, and every character has their own perspective and things they're doing and like missions they're pursuing, and everyone has a reason to be where they're doing things. So it should be fun with the next stream. I'm also excited, Mr. Dad. Um, we'll see what happens going forward, though. One second here. Yeah, we can go ahead and call it there, though. It was fun. Thank you for joining me again. I really appreciate you guys watching. It's nice having you guys here to help out, help me understand things. Definitely helps because there's a lot to go over. But yeah, um, after you finish, I'll post the top 10 characters I had at the time. Sari is interesting. She will now have a personality change since you no longer possess. Yeah, we'll see what happens. She's gonna actually be her true self now. Yeah, your ranking. I'll do like my top characters, like S tier and all that stuff. We'll see. Um, but yeah, I like it so far. I like where it's going. It's gonna be good. I can't wait for future episodes. We're gonna cover the rest of the book by next week though. And I'll see you guys same time on Saturday next week at 8 a.m. Pacific and 11 a.m. Eastern. Thank you all for watching though. I hope you guys have a great day. And we're around the same time we were last time. But yeah, once again, thank you for watching. Have a good one, everyone. Bye bye. And we out.